Welcome to the CPMT Podcast. I'm Scott Merlin. I'm our managing partner. After about 45 years in the business, we really wanted to kind of put forth our knowledge, expertise we've gained over those years in a more casual, fun manner. And I hope this podcast series will be able to do that for you, our clients, our colleagues, our referral sources. So please, if you like the videos, if you like the podcasts, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps us develop more relevant content for you. All right, so we were just talking about several of our clients have called with letters of intent in hand, already signed, and then they want our representation for the deal. Do we think that's great timing? I personally think that's a little late in the game, but talk about a little bit what you've seen on your end.
I mean, it's been the same for me. I have clients that are coming to me ready to sell their business. They've identified a buyer, and they have a letter of intent. The letter of intent sets forth the outline of the terms of the deal. It's going to specify the purchase price, how and when it's going to get paid, and other pertinent parts of the deal, whether or not there's a lease or other thing, employment agreement terms. And in this situation, I just wish they had come to me earlier.
Right.
So I could help guide them through what they can expect through this process, what terms are important, what deal terms are kind of market.
Right.
Instead of, so many of the clients I think come, and maybe you've seen this, with what they think is a good deal, and there's too much risk or whatever.
Well, the other thing, too, is they look at it and it says, well, this is a non-binding letter of intent. So whatever, we'll just put the terms down on paper and it's non-binding. And while that's probably true from a legal perspective, that's the terms by which you're going to guide the rest of the document preparation, right? So even if the LOI is non-binding from a legal perspective, that already puts you, that's where your negotiation sits, right? So the other side, your buyer is going to say, well, that's what you agreed to in the LOI. Yeah, it's not legally binding, but at the same time, hard to argue when you already signed something that says you agreed to that term. Right.
I mean, there's some element of good faith in this.
Sure.
And it works both ways. But the seller shouldn't sign something that they're not willing to take. Or, in theory, I try to counsel the sellers, it should be at the high end of your range. Because up next after the letter of intent or term sheet stage is going to be due diligence.
Right.
And that's when the buyer it's like a house inspector. He's going to come in, look through everything, and find reasons not to pay full price.
Right.
In many cases.
It's just happened to me as before I walked in here. The client actually came to us in time. We helped negotiate the LOI. We signed the LOI. Everybody's ecstatic. They go through a quality of earnings due diligence. And then the buyer comes back and wants to knock some money off the purchase price based on the quality of earnings due diligence. We didn't agree with their quality of earnings due diligence review. And so it was another month worth of negotiations. And today we're supposed to get a new LOI based on the terms that we've agreed to. So it's always a moving target. And like Jeff said, you're exactly right. Go in on the high side because they're going to start chipping away until they're comfortable. And you just got to be comfortable with that final number.
I mean, have you seen where I've frequently, especially lately, seen where client inexperience is evident because they think they've negotiated this deal and it has a substantial portion that's deferred or earn-out. Mm-hmm. And people think earn-outs are great. It's like, oh, I'm going to get that money. What's your experience with earn-outs?
It's probably 50-50 you'll get that number. It's a coin flip. And look, it's all based on the terms of that earn-out, right? You need to be comfortable with your revenue thresholds. The other thing that you don't understand is you're no longer the sole runner of the business. So revenues and profits and things like that are completely out of your control. You have a new owner who's going to implement their policies and procedures, and that could completely affect the way you earn out, the thresholds, reaching them, things like that. So I think it's interesting too that other things we're getting is now, you're getting a handful of cash up front, but you're getting a ton of rollover equity into these new combined entities. And that's just a complete and total variable that you don't understand because you're becoming an owner in a new business. You're just a silent partner. It could be a huge windfall if they grow this. But it can also be you've left a bunch of money on the table. So it's important to what I always advise, and probably you too, is when you get that cash component, you need to be comfortable with the money that's going in your bank account at closing. Everything else is gravy afterwards.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. I mean, so many of the deals now, especially when there's a private equity buyer, have a rollover equity component where effectively, instead of paying cash, they're giving you stock in the entity that is buying you, and then now you're along for a ride that you have no control over, like you just said. And so you just can't count on that to ever hit and be anything. But what about, so this was another thing that came up recently. All right, we got the LOI done. Next stop, due diligence. And clients, I think, don't understand what the due diligence process is going to be like, and the burden on them.
No, and my advice lately has been, it's a second job, right? You are going to spend 70% of your day answering diligence requests over the course of this due diligence period, and even up until closing. Because honestly, diligence doesn't really stop, right? I mean, as you're going and negotiating the purchase agreement, you're still getting due diligence requests as you go. And you really need the client to help you, because only so much we can do from that perspective. That's on them to help us to, produce that information that they're wanting. Right. But yeah, it's a very time-consuming process. I don't think that a lot of clients fully understand the time commitment that it takes to pull all that due diligence. But what we've started doing is when we get to that LOI stage, we'll do I'll send our kind of as if we were representing the buyer due diligence checklist and say, they might not ask for all of this, but they probably will. So just start pulling it together, for when they do, you'll be ready. And that is kind of got them a little bit more prepared to where it's not a total shock to the system.
I do the same thing, because I think that they don't understand the level that buyers are going to dig into.
Right.
The buyer is going to kick every tire. They want to see your IT privacy policies. And so many of our clients are smaller and they don't have some of this stuff.
Sure.
Or they cut and pasted something off the internet. But that's okay. I just want to know about it sooner rather than later, because if it comes up at the 11th hour, we're scrambling around trying to close a deal. Well, we jumped right into like this third-party buyer thing, but so many of our deals are sales to employees or family members.
True. Absolutely.
I mean, it's not just the third-party buyer.
Right.
But what do you tell a client who comes to you? I mean, I think a lot of clients come to us with this preset idea of who's going to buy their business, or nobody might buy their business. But there's more than just the third-party buyer option.
Sure.
So how do you figure out what's best?
Well, I think we have to. I generally just sit with the client for as long as they need, and we kind of work through the different scenarios. Like, what do you need, to retire and not do this anymore, right? Do you need this steady stream of income? Do you need a large cash buyout, to be able to retire and do the things you want to do? How involved do you want to continue to stay in the business for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Selling to employees is a lot tougher because you're never going to get that big check at closing, right? It's just not going to happen. You have to come up with creative ways to get your money out of the business. But if that's, a lot of people are more comfortable with that too. Somebody that I've worked with for 20, 25 years, I'm comfortable handing my baby over to them to run while I'm done, and I'll take a kind of a salary, or I'll take just a long-term 10, 15-year payout, and just work with them as far as buying me out. But I think it's ultimately what they need to get to their end goal, right? And that's where the conversation usually starts. And then if it's, I want $15 million and I want 10 of it in cash, and then I want to go lay on the beach for the rest of my life, that's a third-party buyer. I mean, that's just clear. We just need to go in that direction, right? But if it's, no, I've worked with these same 5 guys or girls for the last 20 years, and I want them to take it over for me when I'm done, or my children are coming up in the business and I want them to have it, then the conversation's completely different, right? It's just how are we going to structure that for you to get what you need to retire, and then easily transition to the next generation to kind of run the business. I'm sure you've seen similar.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's frustrating about a client who comes to you with an LOI in hand. I mean, I try to slow it down a little bit because they've seen a dollar figure.
Right.
They've started spending the money.
Oh yeah.
They're gonna, and part of the psychology of these transactions, I think, and I'm no Harvard MBA or whatever these people are, but they know that once they hook the seller on this, it's all sunshine and rainbows. We're gonna take your company, and we're gonna pay you a ton of money. And once there's some emotional investment, it's hard to push the seller away from that. And I mean, it's not that it's games playing; it's just marketing and sales 101 or whatever, right? And so because they've come to us with a deal in hand, it's hard to say, all right, let's just take a step back. How did this come about? Why are you doing this?
Right.
What about your business now suggests you're antsy to do this? Is this the best price you think you can get? Why do you think it's the best price you can get? What other buyers have you talked to?
Right.
Why this deal versus somebody else's deal? Or do you not have And so it's usually you can cross employees and family off the list fairly quickly, unless, like you said, they're working in the business or they just don't have a team there that's capable of the owner mentality.
But yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of times we get involved in the game a little too late, in that they're already pot committed to doing this, and then that LOI says, "Oh yeah, we expect to close in 2 to 3 weeks," and you're kind of like, "Okay, hold on, take a step back. We're never going to close in 2 to 3 weeks. Just take a step back. Don't believe that that's true. Buyers always want to close quicker than you possibly can."
More psychology.
Exactly right. It's just like, oh, it's going to be simple. We'll just get this done. It's just never that simple. And they're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But at the end of the day, you have one shot to sell your business. One shot. You've spent years growing this business to the point where you can sell it, right? And you want your one shot to go as smoothly and perfectly as possible to when you walk away, you're 100% comfortable, to the extent you can be 100% comfortable, that you've done the right deal and you've done what you needed to do. And I think that's a balance that we have to do as advisors, in trying to just say, like, okay, take a step back, think about it. This is your one shot. Are you comfortable? Is this what you want to do? And I think a lot of times, more times than not, I would say our client ends up with a pretty successful result.
I would say so too. However, I mean, I've seen this happen in several of my transactions where we're within a week or two of the final closing date. And then they start asking the question, is this the most I could get? And I'm like, I don't know. We didn't shop the business around.
Right.
You want me to call one of my, M&A advisor friends and see what's kind of market for this business? And it's not the first time I would have asked that question. As I mentioned, right at the outset, I'm like, why are you selling? What is this price? How did you reach it? But now they're starting to realize this is real. It's very emotional. The emotional and psychological side of this is something else I think we need to talk about, because so many business owners, their whole persona and identity, the business is a reflection of them. It's a life's work.
Absolutely.
And letting go of that is a traumatic process, or I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean,
it's tough on those type of people who identify with their business, right? The day that closes, they get up in the morning the next day and they're like, now what, right? I'm going to go work for somebody else. I don't know how many calls that I've gotten about people that have built their business, run it, sold it, thought they'd be perfectly happy, and they're on some 6-month or 2-year employment agreement, call me up and say, can I get out of this? I cannot work for these people. I need out of here. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Because they will never run the business the way you run the business, ever. So you need to understand that. You need to be comfortable with it. But a lot of times I think, they'll come, they don't like we said, they don't have the family, they don't have the employees. They don't have much of a choice. They're getting into their 60s, 70s, and they don't want to keep working anymore. So it's not ideal, but for their psychological makeup, but probably from a business perspective, it's the best thing they could possibly do at the time. So absolutely, I think it's a psychological toll. I mean, our family has a really good friend who sold his business for a lot of money and thought he was going to be super happy, but he spent years just kind of like moping around and just, why did I do that? And it wasn't even the money part of it. It was just, I don't have anything to do. I still got years left to contribute and do things. And it just took them a little while to kind of find the groove of what am I going to do now, right? And that's part of us too. Is they ask us those questions. Well, what do I do now?
Right.
And well, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? It's just go. That's the stuff you can do now. You have a bunch of money in the bank. It doesn't matter your salary. It doesn't matter how much you're selling. Profit margins don't matter anymore. Where's the next paycheck coming from? Doesn't matter anymore, right? Go do what you love doing, right? And I think that conversation does happen a lot when we have these clients that have just all they've known is running this business, and now that they don't have it anymore, they're kind of lost. Is probably not the greatest word, but they're a little lost as far as what do I do every day now?
Sure. I mean, having that kind of purpose in your life. I mean, everyone strives for that, and
Sure.
that's beyond the scope of this podcast, right? We're not going to solve that problem. But
We'll do that in the next one.
Yeah, that's later.
That's a future
episode
episode.
5.
Right.
But realistically, it gets back to what is triggering. Sometimes it gets back to what is triggering this.
Right.
There's been a health scare. They've received an unsolicited offer on the day that they lost a major customer, or there's bad news that the world economy is about to tank, or Russia invades
Right.
Ukraine, and it's like, I can't go through another 2008
Right.
or a pandemic and worry like this. I need to get out. And then, like everything's cyclical. You get through, you sell your business, and then realize a couple later, well, maybe I could have stuck around for a little bit. It's not so bad. I
Right.
liked working. I loved my
Right.
business. I loved my employees. Or,
Right.
So
Right. In my last 2 months, we were doing really well, so they're going to get all the benefit of that 2 months.
that's
and
right. I left
da.
money on the table.
Left money on the table and things like that, and absolutely. But you're right. I mean, it's all very cyclical. I mean, I think all the deals I did last year were a lot, not all, but most of them, the clients were, I don't want to go through another pandemic. Like we just got out of it. That was such a toll on me. I just want to be done. And then this year, it's more like, the economy's really wishy-washy. I don't know. The bank, the interest rates are crazy. I can't borrow money if I need to borrow money. And these people are coming with a big truckload of cash. Is now the right time to go? And I think that's a lot of the deals that we're getting now are, people are kind of scared of the economy, scared of a recession, scared of how, the business is going to run over the next few years, and they just kind of want somebody to take it over. I mean, and I get it, but 6 years, 6 months, 10 years, 2 years down the road when the economy's right back up,
Right.
and you now see that your business could be doing amazing. There's a lot of regret in it, but I think that goes back to the first thing we were talking about is you need to be comfortable when you walk away with this, one way or the other. You're not going to be 100% comfortable because buyer's going to want to be comfortable too. So you just got to be comfortable. You got to find that comfort level that you're like, okay, no matter what happens, I'm good with the money that's in my bank.
Well, we got through our first episode.
Yep. And, so I think it's important for our audience here to give us a little bit of feedback. So if you liked what you heard today, or if you didn't like and you have some suggestions for us to do in the future, or topics that you'd like us to discuss, like this video, or follow us on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, where we put all of our content, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, I want to hear some comments. I'd love to be able to give them exactly what they want.
Absolutely.